Tony Stark's final thoughts. Do you know what it feels like to know you're going to die? Not the abstract idea of it. Not the vague someday that everyone whispers about in the dark. I mean, really know it. Feel it crawling up your spine like ice water. Taste it on your tongue like copper and ash. See it reflected in the eyes of everyone you love as they realize what you're about to do. I do. I'm Tony Stark. And in the seconds before I snapped my fingers, I saw everything. People think genius is about being smarter than everyone else. About seeing solutions where others see problems. About building things that shouldn't exist and making the impossible look easy. And sure, that's part of it. But what they don't tell you is that genius is also a curse. Because when you see all the possibilities, you also see all the consequences. Every choice branches into 1,000 futures, and you have to live with knowing which ones you destroyed by choosing differently. I've made a lot of choices, built a lot of things. Some of them saved the world. Some of them almost ended it. The Mark I kept me alive in a cave. The Mark II made me a hero. The Mark L couldn't save the kid. Peter. God. Peter. When he turned to dust in my arms, I felt something inside me break that no arc reactor could ever power again. He was terrified. This brilliant, brave, impossibly good kid was scared, and he was reaching for me like I could fix it, like I could save him. And I couldn't. I held him and I felt him disappear, his weight becoming nothing, his voice cutting off mid-sentence, and all I could do was kneel there in the dirt of Titan with my hands empty and my chest hollow. That's when I knew this wasn't over. This couldn't be over. Because if there's one thing I've never been able to accept, it's losing. The years after the snap were strange. Quiet in a way that felt wrong, like the universe itself was holding its breath. I tried to move on. Built a cabin. Married Pepper. Had Morgan. And for a while, I almost convinced myself it was enough. That I could be the man who walked away. The one who chose his family over the mission. The one who finally learned that not every problem was his to solve. But every night I'd lie awake and see their faces. Peter. Strange. The Guardians. Half of everything gone, and I'd run the numbers again. Calculate the probability of success. Map out the quantum variables. Search for the one timeline where we could undo it without losing everything else. 0.03%. That's not a chance. That's a prayer wrapped in mathematics. But I've built my entire life on worse odds. I built the Mark I with scraps in a cave while terrorists watched. I flew a nuclear missile through a wormhole with no guarantee I'd come back. I've stared death in the face so many times it started to feel like an old friend. So when Steve and the others showed up at my door talking about time travel and quantum realms and one more shot, I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell them I was done, that I'd given enough, that I had a daughter who needed her father more than the universe needed another hero. But I couldn't. Because that's the thing about genius and guilt. They don't let you rest. They whisper in the dark that maybe, just maybe, you're the only one who can see the solution. And if you don't try, if you don't risk everything one more time, then every life lost is on you. So I solved it. Time travel. Actual, functioning, navigable time travel. And the moment the model stabilized on my interface, glowing and perfect and impossible, I whispered one word. Shit. Because I knew what it meant. I knew there was no walking away now. The door was open and I was the one holding it, and every moment I hesitated was another moment they stayed dead. The time heist was chaos. Beautiful, terrifying chaos. Seeing my dad again, young and alive and about to become a father. Hearing him talk about fear and responsibility and how nothing matters more than what you leave behind. It was like the universe was giving me one last gift. One last chance to understand that maybe he wasn't the cold, distant genius I remembered. Maybe he was just a man trying his best with impossible circumstances. Maybe he was me. We got the stones, lost Natasha doing it, and I saw the weight of that land on all of them, especially Clint. Another name on the list, another sacrifice made so the rest of us could keep fighting. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that she made her choice. But what could I say that wouldn't sound hollow? I've been carrying the weight of my choices for so long I've forgotten what it feels like to stand up straight. Then Thanos came. Not the tired, broken farmer from the garden planet, the full power, army at his back, destiny in his eyes warlord who thought he was saving the universe by murdering half of it. And he tore through us like we were nothing. I watched Thor fall. Saw Cap standing alone with a broken shield and more courage than any man should be able to carry. Saw the armies of Wakanda and the Asgardians and the sorcerers all converging for one last desperate stand, and I thought, this is it. This is the moment. Everything we fought for comes down to this. Strange looked at me. held up one finger, and I understood the one timeline, the 0.03%. This was it. And it required something specific, something final. It required me. I don't know how I got the stones. The gauntlet was on Thanos, and then it wasn't. And then the nanobots were shifting and forming and bonding them to my hand, and I could feel them. God, I could feel them. It wasn't power. It was annihilation, like holding the sun in your palm and feeling it burn through everything you are. Every cell screaming, every nerve ending on fire, the raw, unfiltered force of creation and destruction coursing through a body that was never meant to contain it. Thanos looked at me, said, "I am inevitable," and I almost laughed. Because he still didn't get it. After everything, after all the death and sacrifice and loss, he thought he was the most important thing in the universe, that his will was destiny. But destiny is just another word for choice, and I'd already made mine. And I am Iron Man. 3 words. That's all it took. 3 words in a snap that echoed through every dimension, every timeline, every possible future. I felt the power surge outward, felt it reach across the battlefield and touch every one of Thanos' soldiers, unmaking them molecule by molecule. Saw the shock on his face as he realized he'd lost, that for all his talk of destiny and inevitability, he was just dust in the wind like everyone else. Then the pain came. Not pain like getting stabbed or shot, not even pain like palladium poisoning eating through your blood. This was something else, something fundamental, like my very existence was being erased from the inside out. The stones were killing me, and they were taking their time doing it. I collapsed. Rhodey was there first, his face above mine, saying something I couldn't quite hear. Then Peter, sweet, impossible Peter, back from the dead and crying, telling me we won, telling me it was okay. And I wanted to tell him it was more than okay. That seeing him alive again was worth everything. That he was going to do amazing things. That the world needed him more than it had ever needed me. But I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only watch as Pepper knelt down beside me, her hand on my chest, right where the arc reactor used to glow. She told me to rest, said I could rest now. And God, I wanted to. I was so tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of calculations and contingencies and carrying the weight of a world that never asked to be saved. Tired of being the one who had to make the impossible choices because no one else could see all the angles. But in those final seconds, as everything started to fade, I didn't think about the battles or the suits or the genius or the glory. I thought about Morgan, about how she'd said, "I love you 3,000 like it was a competition we'd been running her whole life. About how I'd never get to see her grow up, never walk her down the aisle, never meet my grandchildren. All the futures I'd calculated and planned for, gone in a snap. I thought about Pepper, about how she'd stood by me through everything. The arrogance and the recklessness and the obsession. How she'd loved the man inside the suit even when I forgot he existed. How she deserved better than a genius who couldn't figure out how to stop playing hero long enough to just be human. I thought about the Avengers, this broken, beautiful family of gods and soldiers and spies and monsters who'd somehow come together to do something impossible. Who'd trusted me even when I didn't trust myself. Who'd followed me into the Endgame knowing not all of us would come back. I thought about my father, about how I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was better than him, only to end up making the exact same choice, sacrificing everything for a future I'd never see. Leaving behind a child who'd grow up knowing their father loved them but would never really understand why he had to go. The circle was complete. Here's what they don't tell you about dying. It's quiet. After all the noise and fury and fighting, there's just silence. And in that silence, you finally get to see clearly all the things you built and broke, all the lives you saved and couldn't save, all the versions of yourself you tried to be and failed at and somehow succeeded at anyway. I was a lot of things. A genius, a billionaire, a playboy, a philanthropist, a futurist, a man in a tin can who thought he could save the world by being smarter than everyone else. And maybe I was right. Maybe that's exactly what the world needed. Or maybe I was just a scared kid from Manhattan who built himself a suit of armor because he couldn't figure out how to be vulnerable, who pushed everyone away because getting close meant giving them the power to hurt you, who turned his heart into a weapon because he didn't know how else to protect it. I'll never know which version is true. Maybe they both are. Maybe that's what it means to be human. To be brilliant and broken at the same time. To save the world and lose yourself doing it. To love so much it destroys you. But I do know this. In that final moment, with Pepper's hand on my chest and Peter's voice in my ears and Rhodey standing guard like he'd done 1,000 times before, I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel regret. I felt something else. Peace. Because I'd done it. Not the snap. Not the defeat of Thanos. Something bigger. I'd proven that Tony Stark, the man who built his first weapon at 17 and spent 30 years profiting from death, could become something more. Could look at the universe and see not what it was, but what it could be. Could make the choice that mattered most, even when it cost everything. I'd proven that heroes aren't born, they're built. One choice at a time. One sacrifice at a time. One moment of deciding that the future of others matters more than the present of yourself. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can hope for. To leave the world a little better than we found it. To give the next generation a fighting chance. To show them that even when the odds are impossible and the cost is unthinkable, there's still a choice. There's always a choice. My eyes are closing now. The light is fading. But I can still see them. All of them. The ones I saved and the ones I lost. The ones who believed in me and the ones who didn't. They're all here in this final moment, watching as Tony Stark takes his last breath. And I want to tell them something. Something important. Something that will matter when I'm gone. And all that's left is the legend and the suits in the Hall of Armor and the hologram message for Morgan. I want to tell them that it was worth it. Every second of pain and fear and doubt. Every failure and setback and near miss. Every time I put on the suit and flew into the fire. Worth it. All of it. Because in the end, I got to be part of something bigger than myself. Got to stand alongside gods and heroes and prove that a man with a dream and a workshop could change the universe. I want to tell them that I'm sorry. For all the times I was arrogant and difficult and impossible. For all the ways I pushed them away because I was too scared to let them in. For all the damage I did while trying to protect them, I hope they can forgive me. I hope they remember the good parts and forget the rest. But most of all, I want to tell them thank you for seeing something in me worth saving, for trusting me with their lives and their futures, for giving me a reason to be more than just the man in the iron mask, for making me a hero, for making me matter. The arc reactor is dark now. The light that kept me alive for so many years has finally gone out. But somewhere, in a cabin by a lake, there's a little girl who carries that light inside her. And she'll grow up knowing that her father loved her 3,000. That he made a choice. That he proved you don't need to be a god to be worthy. You just need to be willing to pay the price. And I paid it gladly. Because in the end, I wasn't Iron Man because of the suit. I was Iron Man because when the universe needed someone to make the impossible choice, I raised my hand and said, "Me, I am Iron Man, and I would do it all again."